Hello to all of you from sunny Piatra Neamț. The global warming is truly here. It's so nice and warm. Inside at least, because outside it looks like this. Whew. So to warm myself up a bit, I decided to present you this really hot topic. I think what we're going to talk about today should really give you an idea of where should you go with your Romanian, where should you arrive or aim with your Romanian in the long run. And what about the insane accents and the weird expressions? You know, those from the regions nobody understands. You know what? Actually, I have thought about that. And Season 1 Phonetics, as well as an upcoming series surrounding all those regional phrases, should give you an idea of how to tackle that problem. I've got you covered. So, this video useless then? No, bro, not at all. The topic we cover today should give you the foundation which you need in order to understand what those regional expressions are made of. Therefore, I need to clarify that this video will contain some advanced topics. But I will try to explain everything in a way that even beginners can get something out of this. You can think about this video as a logical continuation of the previous video about verbal phrases. Link up here. Before we get started, please consider answering those polls in the community tab on the Romanian Academy channel. So if you go to the channel, you will see this community tab over there. You can select one of the answers, and that will help me loads to understand what you want me to create. Like, subscribe, and join the conversation on Discord. So, in order to understand why, we will need to have a minimum knowledge of the Romanian object pronouns, both direct and indirect, the accusative and dative cases, as well as the reflexive pronouns in both accusative and dative. We will color code them as you have seen because we will use them often enough. I'm not going to get into details about which those pronouns really are or how to use them. Instead, I will just go briefly through what they are. Direct object pronouns are extremely similar to English. You know, the me, you, him, her, all of those. And they describe something that you do an action to, the it that you use with a verb after the verb. They replace something more specific like a name, a noun, a number, and show up usually after that something has been already mentioned. In Romanian, direct objects are only in accusative. And some examples are îl mănânc, I eat it, te vede, he or she sees you, o beau, I drink it. You may notice that the third person direct object depends on the gender of that noun. So, îl can be a burger, for example, and o can be a beer. Also, the direct objects cannot be the same as the subject. If that is confusing, you will see in a second what I mean. Indirect objects, on the other hand, need a bit more explanation. First and foremost, indirect objects in Romanian are both in accusative and in dative. Secondly, what we're going to talk about today are indirect object pronouns, so we will refer only to the dative case since that is where they live in. It describes more of how an action is directed to someone or for someone. To is more the direction, for is more the reason. But more of that in a bit. What I mean by directed, it has a direction. This action goes to someone, so the action is pointed to someone and they receive it indirectly. When you eat, see, or drink something, as we have seen a few moments ago, you interact directly with the burger, the person, or the beer. But when you say things like îi aduc, I bring to or for him or her, ne povestesc, they tell to or for us, or le trimiți, you send to or for them, I can bring them a present, they can tell us a story or a moment, and you can send them an email or an envelope. So the indirect object in dative is really the one that refers to the receiver of the action, rather than the direct object used by that action. Finally, the indirect object pronouns also cannot be the same as the subject. As for the cases, I will just say that you have this video up here where you have all the cases explained, where you have timestamps and you can just jump to accusative or dative, and basically a whole season only about them. That's why we will not focus on cases in this specific video. So, I said that the direct and indirect object pronouns cannot be the same as the subject. Not the same person as a subject, but the same as a subject. So the one who does the action cannot point an action back to themselves unless it's reflexive. And this is what we're going to talk about now. Reflexive pronouns and how they are pretty much the opposite of direct objects and indirect objects. They kind of describe how an action is carried out by the one who does it. So by the subject. The accusative pronouns refer to how you do an action yourself. And you cannot just add them randomly to any verb. There are only certain verbs who can be used reflexively in accusative. And they are usually physical or active actions, such as a se spăla, to wash yourself, a se feri, to avoid oneself or to dodge, a se juca, to play oneself, which usually is referred to sports or physical activities and not really to board games or card games, for example. You use your hands to wash yourself, you move to dodge a kick, and you use your whole body when you play a sport, or at least you should. Moving on to the dative reflexive pronouns, those are a bit weird, even for Romanians. There are only a handful of verbs that are natively reflexive in dative, and while the accusative ones refer to something rather physical, those are more personal. The classics are aș imagina, to imagine, for oneself, and aș aminti, to remember, for myself. Now think about those reflexive dative pronouns as doing something for yourself. So when you say aș face de mâncare, is doing or making food for yourself. And aș pregăti tema is to prepare the homework for yourself, kind of your homework. We will mention at some point in the future also how the dative reflexives and the possessives kind of intertwined. Also, probably you remember those really weird looking phrases from the last episode of season 13 in verbal phrases or locuțiuni verbale. If you missed it, check it out. The link is up here. Oh boy, I know that was a lot. And if you feel like you might need to, just go back and rewatch all of it. Next, we'll put all of that into practice and find out why a da and a lua are really the boss level verbs in Romanian. And why finding out all the possibilities a verb can use or take an object or a reflexive pronoun can make you really sound basically fluent. Don't forget that in the verbal phrases video, we found out that a da and a lua are extremely common with those weird structures. And now we will see how much you can really play with Romanian if you know how to use those objects and pronouns. To do that, we will need some phrasal verbs, starting with a da and a Romanian favorite, a da țeapă. The exact translation, to give, a pike. It probably has some țepeș references in there, but no one can tell for sure. It means to fool, to give, something that is sharp and long, to spike. Now, coming back to the objects and reflexives, you might be able to spot that you can give something, in this case, o țeapă, a pike, and you can give to someone, literally anybody in the world. So you can get this huge variation of how this expression can be used. Next, I will refer to this țeapă or pike as a fool because it's just easier to understand. So you can give a fool to him or to her, or basically fool him or her by saying i-am dat țeapă lui or ei. You can give it without them noticing. Am dat-o fără să afle. Or you can even say that they fooled themselves. Și-au dat singuri țeapă. And then you can change a da to a lua and use the same principle but in reverse. A luat țeapă, he or she got fooled. A luat-o, he or she got it, the fool. Și a luat țeapă, he or she got fooled themselves. This last example is really just to emphasize the action, like pouring some salt on the wound. I-a luat țeapă doesn't really make sense because you cannot take the fool for somebody else. And s-a luat țeapă just simply doesn't make sense. Once again, you can see that some expressions work with some pronouns but don't with others. Now I'm thinking to make this a 3-part series, where in the final episode I will include examples of how those expressions can use, or cannot, those pronouns and reflexives that we have talked about today. Let me know in the comment section below if you are interested to go more in depth with this conversation, or just join it on Discord. We will have a special thread and implicitly a conversation about every single episode from YouTube, starting from this one onwards. So, until the next time, la revedere!